Hey guys, GhazzyTV here with another Path of Exile video, and in this one I'm going to talk about the race Spectres a little bit, because in the 3.20.2 patch notes we got some Sanctum monsters can now be Spectred, and Spectred versions of Stalking Geist will now be able to attack enemies. Lower the resistance and maximum attack distance of the Spectred version of Igneous Gargoyle. Now this looks all fun, right? Because, you know, as someone who, well, one of the very few people, in the entire community that actually dives very deep into minion stuffs. This to me is a call to action for me to just deep dive all the Spectres of the Sanctum mechanic and see if we can find something fun. Now, out of the 43 something monsters, only a handful are spectrable, and which I think it was 10, and out of those only a couple of them looked interesting enough to look at. Because the league mechanic of Sanctum is designed in a way where you are not supposed to be in a huge risk of actually dying, but rather losing resolve or inspiration to fail the league mechanic, which is something I actually think is really cool. They're allowing us to have hardcore or league players be able to engage in the league mechanic without risking to die, because their resolve or inspiration will go down first and send them out. And I think that's a really cool way to balance a roguelike type of league mechanic that way. Another thing I think is really cool is that they've been effectively reusing assets across the board. So the enemies you encounter in the Sanctum are straight up copy pastas from other types of monsters in the game, and then they have adjusted the damage output numbers so that the risk of them basically sitting there and one-shotting enemies, or players in this case, are minimized. And then they are spending time and investment, such as in this patch, to allow us to raise Spectre on a lot of these monsters. Now, my problem with this is going to be very short in this video, and I will talk about Spectres in general instead. Because the thing is, what they've done to Spectres several times over is that they have lowered the level of Spectres multiple times over the past couple of years. So, I believe where the first one is here. 3.10 race Spectres are now level 31, level 1, and 76 at level 20. That's a 4 area level or monster level down. And then later, they nerfed this even further in 3.13, putting it down to level 72 at level 20. And then they lowered it one more time in 3.19, which was lastly bringing it down to level 76 at level 25, which is insane. And it creates level 70 monsters at level 20. Now, normally with Spectre-oriented builds, you end up having about level 25 to 27 level of your race Spectre skill, which puts them up on about a level 78-ish monster level. Now, to look at a level 78 monster level, we can look at something like an Arena Master, and then look at the monster level 78. You can see the stats that they have, about 74,000 HP, 20.4k armor, 12k evasion, yada yada. These are really good defensive stats for a Spectre of this level. Even at 73, they're actually pretty tanky for what they bring to the table. Now, these are really cool things to look at. However, if we look at the new Spectres that we have from the Sanctum mechanic, we can take a look at a Lurid Angel as an example, which was one of the two, the other one being Unearthly Horror. The only two Spectres, in my opinion, that looked interesting enough to actually dive into and see if they would be something that we can actually utilize. And then look at a level 78 Spectre. We can see that the Lurid Angel is actually very, very bad in terms of defensive layers. First off, they don't have the proper resistances on Captain Lightning, making them very hard to cap the rest on. They have pretty bad armor, low evasion, and pretty decent-ish HP to compensate with a little bit of energy shield. So looking at these stats, it all looks fine-ish. Till I realized that the Lurid Angels are in fact a copy-pasta asset from the Pale Angel from the Scourge mechanic, which these days are actually from the Beyond mechanic. And all of the abilities are literally copy-pastas from them. So I'm just going to zoom in here, and you can see the damage numbers of these abilities. The Bolt Impact and the Omega Beam. These numbers made me able to actually say, hey, we're going to take a look at this. Maybe we can make something out of it. And the result was just absolutely disappointing. And then I realized that we've had the exact same type of approach when it comes to the Scourge and nowadays Beyond mechanic monsters. And I took a look at the Pale Angel. Now, Pale Angel at the 78 has the exact same type of defense as Spectres and resistance issues. But if you look at the damage numbers, I'm going to put these up side by side here. And you can see what I am talking about when it comes to the abilities. On the right-hand side, you have Pale Angel. On the left-hand side, you have the Sanctum version of them. I don't even need to say much, but essentially, it's half the damage. More or less half the damage in these abilities. And it's the same thing when we're going to the idea of looking at a Pale Seraphim, for example, which is the copy-pasta version of Unearthly Horror. HP and everything is the same, but as soon as you go down to checking the damage numbers, we're in a situation where, again, it is about half the damage. Here's the Stabby Cleave version, the 732 to 1.1k. And in here, we have 2.2k to 3.3k. It's 3 times lower. I just don't know what to say. I will say, though, like I mentioned earlier, that I think it's really cool that they are reusing assets like this and then rebalancing them for the league mechanic. But what I don't understand is why go through the troubles of making us able to spectre them? Like, what's the point in allowing us to raise these as specters, and then also investing time and money from the devs to make changes to the spectrable versions?
I don't like it. It's shit.
Spectrable versions such as this with a lowered resistance and maximum attack distance on certain versions of these. So they're spending time and money to make changes to this. And I talked about this several times. Race specters are in one of the worst states that we've ever seen in a very, 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 very long time. I don't think we've ever seen it this as bad as it is right now. And I pitched several ideas to Chris Wilson multiple times over when it comes to race specters to alleviate this situation from happening, providing quality of life to players, allowing us to have more options, and also creating a stream of revenue for GGG as well to utilize. Now, race specters is at a point where there are thousands of ways to play with them. But the problem with it is that when they're making changes and balancing things, there's very often that things are bugged. There are multiple specters that are bugged. We use Syndicate Operatives because they were bugged, but that was bugs that actually worked in our favor, which the others are not. It just creates this unnecessary complexity and difficulty to balance and fix these minions or this ability to a point where it's okay for the game. And that creates a lot of time wasted for GGG when it comes to fixing these issues. It creates a lot of frustration for the people that are veteran players in Path of Exile. And it creates a massive confusion for the new and newer players because there's no way for us to verify any of this information in-game. You'd have to go to a content creator and ask them that will then teach you where you can go for third-party tools, such as PoEDB, that is data mining all the information. And then once you have that information, let's take a look at the Lurid Angel, for example. And unless you're actually know what to do and how to decipher this information, people that would look at this, they'll see 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 abilities. But out of these abilities, these two are actually the same ability. It's just an animation difference where one of the triggerable lightning bolts is casting it from its left arm. And then next time it will cast its ability, it will come from its right arm. And it will alternate between these two arms as it's casting its ability. Then there's the bolt impact damage, and then they have a 6-second cooldown of an Omega Beam, which is the big burst damage that they do. Again, we would use Pale Angel, not Lurid Angels. And then they have the teleport ability, which is a 1 going forward, and 1 going backwards, and 1 targeting an ally. These are the same ability, just different targeting of where it's actually going to go. And depending on which version of this ability it's using, it has a Leap Slam, which is basically the teleport distance, minimum distance available. So if the target is too close, they won't actually use it. So with that information, if you're a newer player and just starting off to learn specters, and you were being taught that, hey, you got to go to PoEDB to figure out what the specific monster does as a specter, they'll see this and they'll have no idea how to figure this out. So there's so much unnecessary bloat in terms of difficulty with the ability already. And I've talked about this several times on stream. The pitched idea that I gave Chris Wilson for some years ago was that we would be much better off having Race Spectre providing us with some sort of in-game Necronomicon or something, like a menu, similar to how you can open up bestiary recipes and look through them here, or even looking at the actual monsters in this list, for example, and taking a look at these in a bestiary, if you will. If we had this for Race Spectre as an example, then we would be able to basically pick a base monster model. We could then say that, hey, the next Spectre I'm going to summon should have this or that ability, and that should be listed in this Necronomicon. This would allow GGG to have a much easier time for balancing, much easier time for bug fixing. It would provide a much better quality of life for players. It would also provide us with the ability to easier manage what we're going to summon and what they actually will do, so new and newer players will actually for once understand what they're doing in the actual game. Thank you so much, G. Johnson, for the 5 bomb, man. Appreciate that, sir. And on top of this, with the idea of reusing assets in the game, so it doesn't even cost GGG money to create new models, they can utilize that system to sell MTXs for different base models for how your Spectres will look. They can also sell MTXs for the abilities that you would put on the Spectres, that they could say, well, if you want to have a caster minion, they'd give it one fire spell, one lightning spell, one cold spell that they get to choose from, and, you know, a couple of melee abilities, a couple of buff abilities, a couple of cursed monster versions and whatnot. They have so many options they can do with a Ray Spectre and create a really cool scenario with that being an amazing ability in the game that doesn't have to be a meta ability, but at least gives it some actual depth and also make things easier at the same time as it creates a stream of revenue for GGG. And I've pitched this several times over, and I don't understand why it's not taken into a higher priority to fix. Instead, we are getting situations like this. Hey, let's just make some monsters spectrable. They're completely useless, and people should never even bother looking at them. And only the veterans in the game will understand how to figure that out. But you know, that's good time investment. I'm extremely salty because I'm really annoyed when it comes to Spectre changes that they've done over the last couple of years now, and it's just continuously pisses me off with the way they do this. Anyways, I don't want to rant too much in this video. If you guys like the idea that I had, or if you have any other suggestions, please let me know in the comments below. Hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. So till then, as always, stay safe, keep rocking.